Cyberpunk 2077 is a scam, especially for the console versions. Back in July, I made a video that raised the question, is Cyberpunk 2077 a scam? And for the first few months, it did well. Is Cyberpunk 2077 a scam? That's for you to decide, but after my analysis...
Tell me more, Zimbai.
Don't be a child. If you don't like
Almost
first-person
everything
games,
you said
it's
in
your
your
choice.
video
That
is
doesn't
wrong.
mean the game will
You
be
really
sound
are you
dumb.
under this video
is
Cdpr?
I bet you are a scam.
What do you want to be
Outside
on?
of
Let's make it clear. You want to be a part of
wanted
it.
to show the
This
world
video
of
being
Cyberpunk.
a
You're
I'm sorry to say, you have very little
live.
but you are confirmed a troll, 100%. I don't need to recap what happened at launch, rather in this video I'll be explaining exactly how Cdpr scammed, misled, and took advantage of consumer trust through their marketing, influence across YouTube, lies, and their own ego as a company. I'll be assuming you've seen the first video when I make a few callbacks to it, so if you haven't seen it yet, link is in the description. Alright, so let's find out exactly how Cdpr scammed people out of their money.
Keep her steady!
Before I go back in time, I want to first analyze their most recent statement/apology about the game's launch, as I think it beautifully highlights the company's subtle strategies they love to use. I won't read it all, but in the first paragraph, they basically acknowledged that they scammed consumers by not showing the base PS4 and Xbox One versions in any gameplay reveal, and should have, and I quote, paid more attention to making it play better on those versions. A blatant lie. Because back in November, the CEO of Cdpr said that the game's performances on the base PS4 and Xbox One versions are, and I quote, surprisingly good, I would say, for such a huge world, end quote. Again, a complete and utter lie. They knew exactly how badly bugged the game was at launch, and even tried reassuring people it was working well beforehand without showing any evidence. From how much comments I read from my last video, I know many of you trusted Cdpr because of how much people liked The Witcher 3, or because of the free DLC they released for the game. But I want to establish before going any further that these guys are not your friends. They are a business. Second guess every move they make because it almost always only benefits them in some way. If they can take advantage of you, they will, and they have. Just like the latest apology, they obviously lied and did the minimum by apologizing, offering refunds, and saying that they will do their best to re-earn consumer trust. After, of course, taking their money from all the merch and pre-orders. They also offered refunds most likely to prevent a lawsuit, which didn't work by the way since there are already 2 agencies already seeing if they can file a report. Alright, so now you know their strategy, let's go all the way back to 2012 when they first announced the game. In this presentation, they made a list of promises that they assure Cyberpunk will bring to fruition. Giving credit where it's due, some of these they did achieve. But this is where they planted the foundations of lies that they would later use to hype up their game down the track, such as...
So we are looking for talented individuals who would like to work with us, who are really passionate about RPGs, who are passionate about Cyberpunk. Really would like to work with the best because we are making the best game. So no compromises here, and we are looking forward to hearing from you. I really promise that we'll deliver a truly outstanding futuristic RPG, setting totally new standard in the genre, both in terms of the gameplay, but also on the tech side.
How did they make people believe that they can actually pull all of this off? Fast forward to E3 2018, where they showed off at an Xbox conference a trailer of an unrealistic version of the game, and of course a secret message that says, "We leave greed to others." A few months after that, they released another 45-minute gameplay reveal that can't run on any console or PC to date. How then was it so convincing? Well, people reasoned that the game was in development since 2012, so with all that dev time, they must have found a way. Also, the voice of a guy who constantly lied and stretched the truth throughout the trailer probably contributed a little bit as well.
We are working hard to make Night City a fully realized, seamless open world with no loading screens. We've greatly enhanced our crowd and community systems to create the most believable city in any open world game to date. The city's streets are bustling with crowds of people from all facets of life, all living their lives within a full day and night cycle. And a subdermal weapon grip.
Fast forward to E3 2019 to another Xbox conference. Keanu Reeves was announced to be in the game, says the famous,
"You're breathtaking!"
And the game's pre-orders go live. Even better, it comes out in April of 2020. Of course, if any other studio like EA made such unobtainable promises and showed off the 2018 gameplay, everyone would not have believed them. But because Cdpr made The Witcher 3, and now Keanu Reeves is in the game, boys, I say that's a free pass. Anyway, this is where things start to get really suspicious. Fast forward to January of 2020, the game gets delayed until September, and the devs claim that the game is at a playable state, which I think is another lie. I fully believe they did not have any intentions to actually launch this game until the end of 2020. I mean, look at how much their stocks went up from the beginning of the year to just before launch. And if this game is buggy now, it would be nowhere near functional back in January. We then don't hear anything else about the game until June, except of course a lot of merchandising and features being quietly announced no longer in the game. Getting a bit more suspicious since they sound so confident every time they talk about this standard setting title, but refuse to show off anything of it for half a year, even though the game was supposedly coming out in April. In June, the game gets delayed again to November, and apparently the only thing left in development is bug fixes. The first Night City Wire comes out, the gameplay looks relatively stale, but the hype train keeps going, because this is where the influencers get involved. Across YouTube, different channels have a chance to play the game and of course say incredible things about it.
Because Cyberpunk is definitely the real deal. Having played it, I had my doubts given the trailer and how good it looked. They have delivered, so let me show you Cyberpunk, or at least talk about it, because it's so good.
This throttles the hype train to
maximum overdrive. Hi-ya!
All the while getting these selected YouTubers a lot of views. Obviously, many things they said about the game were just to get on Cdpr's good side to hopefully get that sweet review copy. Other YouTubers see how much views videos about the game are getting and jump aboard the extreme hype train of complete irrationality to hopefully secure the review copy themselves. Some even launch Cyberpunk related merch.
This is Young Yeah 2020.
Others are in the game but aren't allowed to announce that until a few months before launch. And other times, Cdpr takes it upon themselves to send someone who weren't previously talking about or interested in the game a full box of sweets and of course, Cyberpunk merch.
I played The Witcher for a couple minutes. It seemed like a good game. Everybody talks about how cool CD Projekt is. You know, I didn't quite buy it, but they won me over right here. I'm a fan. Whatever it takes to maintain this relationship.
At the time, it seemed like everyone wanted a part of this money-making masterpiece. As you can imagine, the hype at this point is near unstoppable. Anyone foolish enough to go against the grain will instantly get stomped on by the drones of the penis slider. And that's where my video comes in. Posted on July 17th, nearly a month after the first Night City Wire. It was one of, if not the first video on YouTube directly raising concerns about the subtle schemes that may be taking place. But at the time of release, it was hated on and forgotten about. Toxicity even sent her two best agents to dislike all my other videos at the time. Then, in the following months, more Night City Wire episodes came out, but people started becoming aware that the game isn't looking as good as showed years back. Even though Cdpr tried their best to hide the bugs in these highly scripted trailers, if you look close enough you start seeing small hints that the game is nowhere near polished. And the more gunplay they showed off, the more people were getting concerned. Then comes the final delay in October. At this point, the brainwash that Cdpr's marketing team spent so long trying to instill in the fans started to wear off. Why? Well, some people had this game on pre-order since mid last year. Understandably, they're getting impatient. Although some tried justifying the buggy launch by blaming people who didn't want any more delays. You have to understand that the company shouldn't have opened pre-orders that early on when they knew the game was nowhere near ready. But no, they kept the money of the pre-orders, tried to delay the game as much as possible as they saw how much revenue they were getting before the game was even launched. What they didn't take into account though was that people's patience and Cdpr's sweet talk around the lies of the game's state of development wouldn't last forever. I just want to clarify though that no matter how upset people got, sending death threats to the developers and other similar actions are obviously not acceptable. That is never the correct course of action. If you were upset about the delays and had spent money on it, you could have tried refunding your pre-order, and if that didn't work, rationally express your disappointment online. I felt like I needed to clarify that, but anyway, continuing. So, through their lies, cornered themselves in a position where people are getting angry because the product they paid for isn't out and aren't even allowed to see unscripted or highly edited gameplay. However, they can't release the game because it's still a buggy mess, but at the same time can't delay the game again because they'll lose pre-order sales and upset investors. So, what does Cdpr do in this situation? The thing they've been doing for the last 8 years. Lie even more. They again show edited gameplay, which they claim is to avoid spoilers.
In the interest of time, and to avoid spoilers, we have edited this footage.
Except it's of the Xbox Series X, One X, PS5 and PS4 Pro versions of the game, but not the base PS4 and Xbox One models, to obviously hide its perfect form.
Fucking drive, Jackie!
Come on, V, shoot!
Can't! Keep her steady!
But even in the gameplay showed, the game has had a noticeable downgrade. And they turn the camera so slow, which makes it seem like the guy playing is praying that the room completely renders, or that there's no guy in the corner T-posing by the time he finishes panning the camera. Finally, the review copies go out, but only PC versions, and no one's allowed to show any gameplay.
CD Projekt Red wouldn't allow us to use our own recorded gameplay for this review.
Again, to hide the spoilers of many missions that don't work. And anyone leaking gameplay will have their channels terminated and their videos taken down. I mean, they could have just allowed missions already shown in the Night City Wire gameplay to be used, or at least the first 2 missions, but anyway. Launch week happens, they admit they lied, and PlayStation takes the game down off PSN Store, and offers full refunds. Xbox refunds follow soon after. And of course, who can't forget the influencers who at this point got the review copy they so eagerly wanted, abandon the hype express and say what they actually think of the game, but get no backlash because it's now a trend to point out the game's flaws. Wow, what a crazy launch week. Since then, some bugs have been fixed, while many more have been added and yet to be patched. The game does work better on PC and next-gen consoles, but even then, it doesn't save the game from the bigger bugs like file corruption or crashing. It's not the consumer's fault that they were promised a dysfunctional game. Though, I hope people now understand that there's no harm done by being extra cautious before buying or pre-ordering a game, no matter how great the company's track record is. And don't trust what the YouTube influencers or review outlets say about the game, even if they do play it months early, since they most likely are being paid or want to get on the good side of the company who let them try their game early. Wait until the consumers, the people who paid for it and play it on the system you have, to honestly tell you if the game works or has the promises the devs made. Also, as a side point, every time the announcers, managers, or whoever at Cdpr talk about a delay or decision they made, they always had an ego behind the words. and they sweet talk around a lot of the lies they made. For example, all the way back at 2012, when they first announced the game.
And finally, I think it's a really bold statement, but if you don't believe me, play our Witcher games. We really would like to work with the best because we are making the best game. So no compromises here.
To when they delayed the game for the first time, they said, "We want Cyberpunk 2077 to be our crowning achievement for this generation." And for the second delay, they also said, "We won't ship something which is not ready. Ready when it's done is not just a phrase we say because it sounds right. It's something we live by, even when we know we'll take the heat for it." It's just things developers usually don't say, no matter how confident they are in the product. Even when someone tries to call them out for having microtransactions in the multiplayer, when they previously announced they wouldn't have any, they still say, "Like always, expect us to treat your money with respect." They had such confidence in themselves and their product, but barely anything to back it up. It was one big old bluff. I mean, it's normal for companies to oversell their product, but Cdpr really pushed their game and their own conduct as a company too far. Most of the promises they made throughout the years, for example in E3,
however, I never once managed to get this area to fill with as many NPCs as what we saw in that demo, even with the crowd density maxed out in the gameplay option.
Or others they made in interviews, such as the NPCs having a daily routine, or any actual police system that isn't just them spawning near your area, is obviously a complete lie. I'll leave a link in the description to a Reddit post that highlights a list of content about the AI that was promised but not in the game, and I'm sure there are other lists that highlight all the cut content and other lies they made over the years, but I don't have the time to find them now. If you do find something like that, leave a link in the comments below. I'd appreciate it.
Yo, this is worse than the last one.
I don't doubt the devs can make the game much less buggy in the years to come, and the game underneath all the bugs is a good and above average RPG. And I'm sure they'll find a way to expand on it as time goes by, but that still doesn't take away the schemes they tried pulling at launch. To be honest, I feel really bad for the developers who were forced to work overtime by their management leaders. They were taken advantage of by the corporate higher-ups who were rolling in money until the game's release. But I hope the CEO and managers at Cdpr know that this kid and his coalition of friends and supporters of his video, even if it was a handful of people who ended up not pre-ordering the game because of my video, had a part in fighting against their corporate schemes, and at the end of the day, won the fight. I want to thank everyone who left a nice comment on my older video back in the first few months when it was getting hated on. You guys really helped me to continue to not give up on making videos regardless of the reception it got at the time. The point of making that video was not to be a contrarian, rather to raise rational concerns and set realistic expectations, since I saw how much the pre-orders and merch was instantly selling out and the vast majority of people were acting like this game could do no wrong. So I looked at what was shown, and it wasn't matching anything near the expectations of the game or how great Cdpr was bigging it up to be. But the Cyberpunk drones and fanbase at the time, which is one of the most toxic I've ever seen, gave me no mercy for not worshipping the penis slider. It was my 4th video at the time, and my other vids didn't pass 40 views, half of which were my friends and I rewatching it a few times. So it was a major shock to get 1,000 views in the first week of release, and most of the reception being very negative.
This is where the fun begins.
But at the end of the day, the haters got what they deserved for worshipping a company. So again, I thank you guys who were rational or even who disagreed with the video, but in a polite and human way. Those discussions were also really nice. You guys were a big encouragement for me continuing YouTube. I think I've said everything I needed to on this topic, so this will be my last video on Cyberpunk for a while, unless something really big happens in the future. But I think the 3 videos I posted throughout the year speak for themselves and round up my opinions on this situation well enough. So, with all that finally said, This has been the Hero of Sinnoh. Thanks for watching.